The music in the Drakengard and Nier universe has evolved drastically over the course of time, all the way from 2003's Drakengard 1 to the recently released Nier Automata, which is bound to happen when a series evolves and grows. Considering that the earliest entry in the timeline is already 14 years old, there's a lot to go over, so let's get to it. Drakengard 1's soundtrack was composed by Nobuyoshi Sano and Takayuki Aihara, and it is a prime example of an experimental soundtrack. Although it may not be the most melodically pleasing soundtrack, it still did what it set out to do, which was to create a sense of eerie and suspense. The soundtrack wasn't created with the intention of putting you to sleep with soft piano tracks or pumping you up for a boss battle with a beautiful orchestra. Drakengard 1's chaos is what is truly reflected in its soundtrack. It's sharp, and it makes you wince. It's definitely one of the most unique soundtracks out there. Considering that it was created in 2003, it was rather ahead of its time with its disturbing and chilling instrumentals. The theme song for Drakengard 1 is titled Tsukiru, and was performed by Eriko Hatsune, Huriai's Japanese voice actress. For the English localization of the game, the main theme was changed and renamed Growing Wings instead. In Japanese, the song represented Huriai's feelings towards Kaim and her guilt, but the English version was rewritten to be seen as more adaptable to a Western audience, and therefore removed much of the reference to love and suicide that the original had, effectively watering it down. Drakengard 2's music was composed by Aoi Yoshiki and Ryoki Matsumoto. Considering that they share very similar themes, Drakengard 2's music shares the same tense style that the first game had, although it is considerably less experimental and more melodic, even though the sense of urgency and dread is still prominent. Unlike Drakengard 1, it's more consistently melodic throughout its different tracks, because of the orchestral elements and the choir. However, this comes at the price of its uniqueness. The second game's main theme is called Hitori, and was performed by Mika Nakashima. The English localization of the game rearranged the song Growing Wings from the first game instead of using Hitori, which was most likely done to avoid any problems with copyrights. Let's skip ahead 4 years to 2010, when we were first blessed with the magical musical talents of Studio Monaka. Keiichi Okabe is the main composer for Nier, Nier Automata, and Drakengard 3. Other games that he's worked on include Tekken, Taiko no Tatsujin, Katamari Damacy, Super Smash Bros., and Final Fantasy XV's Episode Gladiolus, to name a few. Drakengard 3's soundtrack is considerably more ambitious and grand in comparison to the two previous titles. It doesn't quite have the first game's tension or the second game's mellow choir arrangements, but it does have a lot of character. Music is an incredibly important element of Drakengard 3 overall, seeing as the main characters are all intoners, or goddesses of song. Everything from soft music boxes to blaring electric guitars and hard electronic beats are mixed into the game. It has a different sense of scale in comparison to its predecessors, in the sense that it's both melancholic but also very aggressive when it needs to be. In short, there's less building up tension and more straight up ass kicking. Drakengard 3 technically has two different main themes, Kuroi Yuta and This Silence Is Mine. It also has a rearranged version of Tsukiru from the first game. This Silence Is Mine was used in one of the game's trailers, as well as the game's ending credits and the opening. It was performed by the Japanese artist Chihiro Onitsuka, who also allegedly wrote the song in only 5 minutes. Kuroi Yuta was sung by the artist Aide Aoi in Japanese, but for the international release of the game, the song was performed by Emmy Evans. As the song's lyrics are written in a made-up language that loosely resembles Japanese, the lyrics were not rewritten, but rather both the Aide Aoi version and the Emmy Evans version share the same lyrics. The original Nier soundtrack was highly praised for its originality, and sold well enough in Japan to spawn 4 consecutive rearrangement albums following its release. A majority of the tracks that are featured in Nier's soundtrack have vocals provided by the artist Emmy Evans. Although most tracks have written lyrics, only a few have a distinctive meaning to them. Several tracks also have different versions that play during the game's different routes to invoke different emotions each time. During the process of creating the game, the soundtrack was what would come first, and then the world and the scene would be built around the soundtrack. This led to songs that were intentionally going to be used in one place to be switched around to fit another area better. Overall, it has a very mellow and traditional sound. It's far from modern, but it still haunts haunting. When it comes to Nier, it's difficult to pin down one singular song as a promotional song, as Nier doesn't have a specific vocal track that was used particularly for promotions and credits that was sung by a specific artist other than Evans herself. It has a lot of iconic songs like Song of the Ancients, Yona, Grandma, Emil, and Shadow Lord. As for the newest addition to the timeline, Nier Automata is unsurprisingly a lot more futuristic than the previous Nier game, even though it carries a lot of classical elements. Automata's soundtrack has several tracks that have different versions, just like the original game had. A lot of tracks are also rearranged songs from the original soundtrack with a new twist. Many tracks have an instrumental version and then a vocal version. The music direction for Automata was also different. Seeing as Automata is a large open world game, several tracks were made to blend into each other in order to make room for smoother transitions. The soundtrack also has an entire CD dedicated to the hacking tracks only, which really shows off the attention to detail. Nier Automata has one main theme song that has 4 separate versions. The Weight of the World, a Japanese version by Marina Kawano, an English version by Janique Nicole, a fake language version that's heavily based on French by Emmy Evans, and finally, a version known as The Weight of the World, The End of Yorha. The Japanese band Amazarashi also created a song in collaboration with the game. The song was titled Inochi ni Fusawashi. The song was used in promotional material, as well as in the ending credits for the game's DLC. A lot can be said for the soundtrack of the series, but it's undeniably varied. Comparing the older soundtracks to the newer ones gives us an overall sense of how the different installments fit into the universe as well. Drakengard 1 is chaotic and eerie, Drakengard 2 is a bit more peaceful and melodic, Drakengard 3 is epic and extensive, Nier is hurtful and somber, and Nier Automata is just a little bit of everything. Although all of the entries in the series have their fair share of chaotic or dramatic tracks, there are always these slow, haunting tracks that stick with you as well. In short, as a longtime fan of the Drakengard and Nier universe, I love all of the soundtracks for their own distinctive style. I love that I can pull up a song and instantly tell which game it's from. They're all very different, but they all have their rightful place in the timeline. I hope you liked this video, and I hope you learned something new. Thank you so much for watching.